So what happens when a kingdom faces an impossible choice? Submit or be completely wiped out? Well, we're about to dive into a story where the answer wasn't just defiance. It was about forging a legend that would never die. This is the incredible tale of a kingdom's final stand. And everything we're about to talk about, it all comes back to this one single line. The river knows where it ends. It's part prophecy, part acceptance, and, well, it's also a powerful declaration. As we get into this, you'll really feel the weight of those words. All right, so who was this kingdom that absolutely refused to kneel? We've got to go back in time, way before the modern borders we see on maps today, to a serious power in West Africa, the kingdom of Kaabu. See, Kaabu wasn't just a place, it was a whole culture. This was a Mandinga kingdom, and its territory stretched across what we now know as the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and the Casamance region. And its foundation? It was built on sheer courage, a fierce warrior discipline, and a deep, unwavering respect for ancestral law. Courage here? Yeah, it wasn't just a nice idea. It was basically state policy. And believe me, they needed every ounce of that courage. For generations, Kaabu was in a constant state of pushback. They were holding the line against the expanding Fula jihad states pushing out from Fouta Djallon. This wasn't some new threat that just popped up. No, this was the defining reality of their entire existence. They were a fortress of resistance. And right at the heart of this defiant kingdom was a capital city that was basically its soul made physical, the mighty fortress of KANSALA. Okay, so picture it. Right in the very center of this powerful, unbending kingdom was its nerve center, its beating heart, its military and political core. This was KANSALA. But KANSALA wasn't just made of stone and reinforced with iron. Nah, its real foundation, the thing that truly held it all together, was pride. This place was a physical statement of Kaabu's refusal to ever bend. Now, every great story has that one central character, right? And this one is no different. Sitting on the throne of this incredible fortress was a king who carried a seriously heavy burden. He already knew what was coming. His name was Janke Waali. And you have to understand, unlike other rulers who might have been hoping for a miracle or praying for victory, Janke Waali, he had already seen the end of the story before it was even written. The griots, the oral historians of the region, they tell us he said it himself. The river knows where it ends. I too know that I am the last. Can you even imagine hearing that from your king? It's just a shocking, stunning admission of finality. So this is the real question, isn't it? What do you do if you know for a fact that your kingdom is doomed? How do you possibly lead your people? Do you surrender to try and save lives? Do you run? Or do you do something else entirely? Do you try to seize control of the story itself? Janke Waali's answer to that question is exactly what makes this story so legendary. He didn't pick surrender, and he didn't pick retreat. No, he chose to forge a final stand. I mean, the expected path, the normal thing to do, would be to rule with fear, right? To try and manage the decline, just hold on. But he completely rejected that. He chose to rule with fire, this active, defiant, burning energy. So what does he do? His first move is to just shatter tradition. Where the old custom said you put the seasoned, maybe even tired, old generals in charge, he saw a totally different path. He put young, absolutely fearless commanders in charge of his army. Why? Because he believed the future, even if it was a short one, belonged to them. And this, right here, was a massive shift in thinking. The goal was no longer just survival. He knew that was impossible. The new goal was to create a final act so powerful, so unbelievably courageous, that it would be remembered forever. He wasn't just accepting their fate, he was recasting it. And by doing that, he completely changed the definition of victory. It wasn't about winning the battle anymore, not at all. It was about winning immortality through the story that people would tell for centuries. His strategy was just incredible, really. Let's break it down. First, he looked his fate right in the eye and accepted it without despair. Second, he chose to lead with passion, not with panic. Third, he empowered a whole new generation of leaders. And finally, he prepared his entire kingdom not for a defeat, but for a legendary final act. When you get right down to it, Janke Waali understood something profound. He knew he couldn't control the outcome, but he could control the narrative. By choosing how they would end, he took what was an inevitable, crushing defeat and transformed it into one of history's greatest acts of defiance. About history, we usually picture emperors and kings, right? The story is so often written by the people who wear the crown. But sometimes, and this is where it gets really interesting, the biggest influence comes from a voice outside the palace walls, a kind of wisdom that doesn't need a throne. And that's exactly the story we're getting into today. So, this is the central question, the real puzzle we're trying to solve. How on earth does a man with absolutely no official title, no crown, get the most powerful rulers in the land to actually listen to him? Well, the answer isn't found in some royal decree or a forgotten law. It's in the story of one person, a man whose reputation was built on something much stronger than command. It was built on character. Let's start with his unique position in society. We're calling this section the uncrowned advisor, because it perfectly captures the paradox of his power. That man's name was Ngaling Sonko. Now, at the time, you had rulers like the great Janke Waali holding court in the capital city, KANSALA. But Sonko's influence, it spread in a totally different way. He was no emperor, but believe me, when he decided to speak, even emperors went silent.
So let's break this down, because it's pretty fascinating. On one side, you've got the king's power, right? It comes from a title, from the authority of the palace, from the ability to just give an order. But Sonko's power was a whole different ballgame. It came from his wisdom, from the deep respect he had earned, and from the sheer power of his persuasion. The incredible part is, he spoke to rulers as an equal, not as someone beneath them.
Okay, so how did he get this amazing perspective? Well, his journey as a walker between worlds is really the key. His life experiences were what shaped his incredible influence. Just look at all the different hats he wore. He was a warrior of Kaabu, so he knew conflict inside and out. He traveled from one royal court to another, so he understood politics. But, and this is so important, he also visited the villages, so he never ever lost touch with the everyday people. This gave him this complete 360-degree view of his society that, frankly, nobody else had. The griots, who were the oral historians of the time, had this just beautiful way of describing him. They said he was tall in spirit and powerful without arrogance. But my absolute favorite, the phrase that really sticks with you, is that he was heavy with wisdom. Just think about that. It makes it sound like his knowledge was so profound it had actual substance, actual weight. That right there tells you everything about the immense respect people had for him. All of this experience, all this wisdom, it all boiled down to one single core message. A message that focused on the most urgent crisis he saw around him. His people were a house divided. Now, his teachings weren't written down in dusty old books. No, they were alive. They were woven right into the music and the stories of his people, carried on the strings of the kora and sung in the praise songs of the griots. And one message in particular was repeated over and over and over again. And this was it. An African who fights another African weakens the whole house. He looked at the constant, destructive internal wars between groups like the Mandinka, the Fula, and the Jola. And he didn't see strength.
He saw a fatal flaw, a weakness that was literally tearing their world apart from the inside out.
So he laid out a very clear choice for them. You can go down the path of division, which only leads to more war, more weakness, and ultimately a broken house. Or you can choose the path of unity, and that leads to real strength, to shared wisdom, and to a house that stands whole.
And he didn't just save this message for the kings. Oh no, he took it straight to the people holding the weapons. When he stood there among the warriors, his warning was just as direct and just as powerful.
Strength without wisdom is destruction. It's so simple, but so incredibly profound. He was telling them, look, your power, your courage, your skill with a sword, it's all meaningless. In fact, it's worse than meaningless. It's dangerous. If it's not guided by foresight, by understanding, by a purpose that actually helps the entire community. So if Ngaling Sonko didn't build any monuments and he didn't write any books, how do we even know his story today? Well, the answer is in the enduring voice that carried his legacy through the centuries. And that voice belongs to the griots. A griot is so much more than just a storyteller. You have to think of them as the living libraries of their people. They were the keepers of history, of wisdom, of everything that mattered, passed down from one generation to the next through incredibly intricate poetry and music. And Sonko's legacy was put in the hands of the absolute masters of this tradition, greats like Jali Malongji, Kuyate, and Jali Alajib Mbaye. These were the men who made it their life's mission to make sure the wisdom of Ngaling Sonko would never be forgotten. And because of them, because of this incredible oral tradition, his voice never really faded away, his story survived, and it's this timeless reminder of a really fundamental truth, that the strongest kind of leadership, the kind that truly lasts, isn't built on force or a fancy title. It's built on the solid bedrock of wisdom and unity.
We're diving into an incredible story of defiance, of an empire's final moments, and an explosion so massive it was said to have made the earth itself scream. This is the story of the thunderous end of the great Kaabu Empire.
You heard that right. This story begins really at its end, with this one terrifying line from the historical accounts. The earth itself screamed. I mean, just imagine a sound so powerful, so utterly devastating, that it wasn't just described as a bang, but as the planet itself crying out.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What on earth could cause a cataclysm like that? What actually happened at the fortress of KANSALA to earn a description like that? Well, let's piece it all together. To really understand that final world-shaking moment, we've got to rewind a bit. We're going back to the brutal, desperate siege of a mighty fortress called KANSALA. Okay, so picture this. It's around 1867, and there's this prophecy of doom hanging over the Kaabu Empire. Soon enough, the rising power of the Fula Empire shows up and lays a relentless siege on the capital, KANSALA. We're talking months of non-stop cannon fire, just this constant drumbeat of war. Inside the walls, food and water are running out, hope is fading fast, defeat looks absolutely certain. But here's the thing, while total chaos was reigning outside the fortress walls, inside, Kaabu's leader, a man named Janke Waali, was about to make his final history-altering command. In the middle of all this cannon fire, starvation, and fear, the king of Kaabu, Janke Waali, was said to be calm. Can you even imagine? He's watching the complete and total annihilation of his kingdom unfold, and the accounts say he did it with this kind of unnerving resolve.
Now, when you're faced with certain defeat like that, you've got options, right? He could have begged for mercy. He could have tried to escape to save his own skin. He did neither. Instead, he got his council together for one last fateful meeting.
And it was in that meeting that he spoke these words that would seal the fate of his entire empire. Kaabu will not be taken. If it must end, it will end by our own hands. I mean, just wow. That is an unbelievable statement of defiance in the face of absolute destruction.
See, this wasn't an act of surrender. No way. This was an act of ultimate control. The moment defeat became a sure thing, Janke Waali gave his final terrible command: light up the fortress's massive gunpowder stores. The very arsenal that was supposed to defend them was about to become their end.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to that terrifying scream. Now we know why it happened. So let's talk about the legacy of KANSALA, because they were defeated for sure, but they were never conquered.
The result? Well, cataclysmic. A single massive explosion just tore KANSALA right off the face of the earth. The blast was so huge it killed everyone inside and a whole lot of the attacking army outside too. They say the sky went dark and the ground itself literally split open. In that one thunderous instant, the empire of Kaabu was just gone.
And just like that, Kaabu fell. The empire was no more. The fortress was a crater. The king and all his people were dead. It's a simple, tragic, and undeniable fact.
But this is where we have to make a really important distinction. Kaabu was absolutely defeated. Their physical power was completely broken. But were they conquered? See, to be conquered means you surrender your will, your spirit, to somebody else. Janke Waali and his people, they refused to do that. They chose utter destruction over being subjugated.
And that leaves us with a really profound question, one that kind of echoes out from the ruins of KANSALA. When you're in a situation with absolutely no hope of physical survival, what is the true meaning of victory? Is it living to see another day, but under someone else's rule? Or is it making sure that your spirit, your will, is never, ever broken, even if it means facing death itself?
Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when a great empire falls? You know, after the cities have crumbled and the powerful rulers are just gone. Usually they just become a chapter in a history book, right? But every now and then, a story is so powerful it just refuses to die. It becomes an echo. And that's what we're diving into today, the incredible story of the Kaabu Empire. It's a story of fire, of unity, and of a spirit that just could not be put.
Just let that sink in for a second. Unity can outlive stone. This one idea, passed down for generations by West African storytellers, is really the key to everything we're talking about today. It's not just some pretty poetic line, it's a whole philosophy, a way of life that was born from the ashes of one of the most dramatic collapses in history. And our story really kicks off at the very end of the empire. See, the fall of KANSALA, the capital city of Kaabu, wasn't just another battle. It was a cataclysm, a world-changing event that slammed the door on one era and completely redrew the map for the future of the entire Senegambia region. So from this one massive event, a brand new chapter gets started. But what's so fascinating here is that what came next wasn't really defined by the people who won the battle. Nope, it was defined by two legendary figures from inside Kaabu itself. Two leaders who would end up shaping the very soul of their people by choosing two totally different paths forward. You know, they say you can understand the heart of a culture by looking at its heroes. And for Kaabu, those heroes are Janke Waali, the very last emperor, and Ngaling Sonko, a kind of warrior philosopher. The choices they made in those final desperate moments of the empire created this dual legacy that, believe it or not, still echoes today.
So on one side, you've got Janke Waali. He is the ultimate symbol of defiance. Rather than surrender and submit, he chose to go out in a final, blazing act of destruction. His legacy is one of fire, of choosing dignity, even in total defeat. And then, on the other side, you have Ngaling Sonko. He was the voice of reason, the voice of unity, who kept warning everyone that fighting amongst themselves would be their ruin. His legacy wasn't about a final act, but an idea that would last forever, that their strength as a people could outlive any fortress made of stone.
These two men, they're like two sides of the same coin. They represent this fundamental choice that really every culture has to face after huge tragedy. Do you go out in a blaze of glory, a final defiant roar, or do you plant a seed, a story that's meant to grow for generations to come? It's the ultimate choice between an explosion and an echo.
Janke Waali? He absolutely chose the explosion, a brilliant, fiery, undeniable act of defiance. His story is all about honor, about refusing to be conquered. It's a legacy written in flames that basically says, we may fall, but we will never, ever bend. You will remember us for our strength.
Ngaling Sonko, well, he chose the echo. His legacy was all about persistence. He understood that even if the empire was gone, the story of its people, their values, their bond, that could ripple through time. It could be passed from one generation to the next, forever. His legacy wasn't a single moment. It was a sound that would just keep going.
But here's the most important part, the thing you have to get. These two ideas, the explosion and the echo, they aren't opposites. Together, they form the complete soul of Kaabu. It's a spirit that combines that fiery, unyielding defiance with this deep, unbreakable belief in unity. It's the spirit of a people who just flat out refuse to be erased from the pages of history.
So, the big question is, how does a story like this actually survive for centuries, especially with no empire around to protect it? Well, it's because it wasn't carved into stone monuments that could just crumble away. It was woven into the very fabric of the culture itself.
Kaabu survives, first and foremost, in memory. It's passed down from parent to child, generation after generation. It lives on in the spirit of resistance, inspiring people in future struggles. But maybe most beautifully, it survives in song. It's literally carried on the strings of the kora by the griots, these amazing oral historians, the storytellers, the keepers of the flame. They are the ones who make sure that the echo of Ngaling Sonko and the fire of Janke Waali are never, ever silent.
And that really brings us to the most powerful takeaway of this entire story. The empire fell. The capital, KANSALA, was destroyed. But Kaabu did not disappear. Its spirit, its culture, its incredible story of defiant unity, that lived on. It's proof that a people are so much more than their borders or their buildings. The story of Kaabu is such a profound piece of African heritage. But you know what? It also leaves us with this huge, universal question. It makes you think about our own legacies, right? When our time is up, what are we going to leave behind? Will it be the memory of a brilliant explosion or a quiet echo that ripples on and on for generations? And maybe, just as important, who will be the griots that tell our stories?
Thank you.